Hey everyone, I have a ton of merchandise coming out for the 2022 season, including a bunch of Tour Series discs and other products. I'm also going to be announcing seminars and clinics all over the country. To be the first to be notified of these, go to scottstokely.net and get on my mailing list. Hey everyone, I'm Scott Stokely, and here's the situation. You're on the tee pad of a hole. You've already decided what shot you're going to throw. You look over at your bag and you have 94 discs to choose from. Which one do you pick? All right off the bat, I'm not going to get on my soapbox about how y'all are carrying too many discs. And I know 94 is an exaggeration. It's probably more like 85 or 86 discs to choose from. But it's still a challenge, especially if you're new, which disc to throw. Now this video is not going to be about shot selection. That's a whole other can of worms, or 100 can of worms for that matter. This is about which disc do you choose once you know the shot you're going to throw. Now I got some good news and some bad news. The bad news is there's probably 50 different variables and considerations when deciding which disc to throw. The good news is almost all of them are absorbed if you get these two right. First, you understand that these are general rules. Everything I'm about to say, there are exceptions for. If you read the comments, you're probably gonna read about 100 of them. What I'm saying is if you get these two things right, you're gonna choose the right disc most of the time. All right, number one, you choose the slowest disc that you can reach the hole with. Now the reason why is you want to create the largest margin for error possible. Let's say you have three players, player A, player B, and player C. All three players can reach the target with a putter, a very slow disc. Player A opts to throw their putter. Player B throws a mid-range disc, and player C throws a driver. On the first hole, they all execute their shots perfectly. That means they're all underneath the basket. You throw a good shot, the shot works. That's not what disc selection is about. The disc selection is about what happens when you get it wrong. Because on the next hole, player A, player B, and player C all throw 10% too hard. All three players make identical physical errors. Player A with their putter goes a little past the basket. Player B with the mid-range goes a fair amount past the basket. Player C with the driver goes way past the basket. Same exact error from all three players. Player A doesn't get penalized, player C gets penalized severely. Throw the slowest disc, the margin for error becomes large. Faster the disc, the smaller the window. Now, once you've chosen the category of disc that is the slowest you can reach the hole with, putters being slower than approach discs being slower than mid-range being slower than drivers being slower than high-speed drivers. Once you have the category, then you need to choose the disc with the correct flight path. And the way you do that is you look at the path that you're going to throw, and you throw the disc and the delivery, backhand or sidearm, that is going to create the largest fairway possible. Now this is important because it doesn't seem like the size of a fairway changes, but it does. It's all about geometry, and I'm not going to go all math on you, but it's a basic idea you have to understand when it comes to disc selection. When you throw a shot that follows the natural flight of the fairway, and that requires a disc that has a flight characteristic that matches the natural flight of the fairway, you are throwing through the largest fairway throughout the entire flight. Any flight path that deviates from that is going to create a narrower fairway. For example, you have a tight fairway that flies straight and it fades to the left. All three players are right-handed throwing backhands. Player A is throwing an overstable disc with a high fade. Player B is throwing a straight flying disc with only a slight fade. And player C is throwing an understable disc with no fade, or very little fade. On the first hole, all three players execute exactly how they intend. They're all underneath the basket. All three of those discs can work if you execute perfectly. However, let's suppose each of them is off their line by the identical number of degrees. In other words, all three of them committed the same physical, technical execution error. Player A still flies down the wide fairway and it fades to the target. Player B had to play a wider shot because the disc isn't going to fade. They had to create an arc on the fairway with a hyzer throw, which effectively made the fairway narrower, meaning when they're off by a little bit, they're gonna clip some branches. And player C doesn't even have a chance hardly. They have to cut it so tight with this squirrely S-turn that they are cutting it close on the left and close on the right, and at the end of the throw, if they're off by a tiny bit, they're off in the woods. Same identical error. The disc with a flight characteristic that traces the largest part of the fairway throughout the flight is going to have the largest margin for error. It will be executed correctly more often. That's the basic idea of choosing the disc. You throw something slower so you don't have to execute the power perfectly. You throw a disc with a flight characteristic that matches the widest part of the fairway throughout the fairway, and you don't have to execute the line as perfectly. Then once you're doing those two things, as you get better and you evolve, you're gonna notice the other 20 things you're considering on a throw. But even at the highest level, those two factors are what matter 90% of the time and always above everything else. Make sure you click subscribe down below for more tutorial videos.